Welcome to Lore of the Rings, where we explore the secret paths of Middle-earth and share the stories Tolkien never told. Before we dive in, take a moment to tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from and whether this tale has found you by day or by night. There are places in Middle-earth where the wind carries no warmth, where the sun rises pale and reluctant, casting long shadows over broken stones and barren fields, where the rivers run cold and dark, and the mountains stand like silent sentinels over a land that remembers its wounds. The North, once proud, once prosperous, is such a place where kingdoms fell not to armies alone, but to something far more insidious, a shadow, a name spoken in whispers if spoken at all. The Witch-king of Angmar. You know him, perhaps, from the final days of the Third Age. The Lord of the Nazgul, the chief servant of Sauron, the wraith who led the assault on Minas Tirith and fell at last upon the Pelennor fields to the blade of Eowyn and the courage of Merry Brandybuck. A dark legend. A footnote in the Great War of the Ring. But that is only the end of his tale. His beginning, his rise, his kingdom, his reign of terror, is a story almost forgotten. Erased from memory by time and tragedy, buried beneath centuries of ruin and silence. The North remembers him only in nightmares, in the names of cursed places, in the gaps where kingdoms once stood. Angmar, a realm of shadow in the cold North, carved from fear and ambition. A kingdom ruled not by a mortal king, but by something that had once been mortal, something that had surrendered its humanity for power, for immortality, for dominion over the living and the dead. For nearly 700 years, the Witch-king waged war against the free peoples of the North. He broke kingdoms. He shattered alliances. He turned the land itself into a weapon, cold, barren, hostile. And when at last he was defeated, he did not die. He could not die. He simply vanished. Into the mists of history, into the margins of ancient texts. Until now, this is not the tale of his final fall. That story has been told. This is the tale of his rise, of the forgotten history of Angmar, of the centuries of terror that reshaped the North and set the stage for the darker struggles to come. Who was he before the ring claimed him? What drove him to serve Sauron? How did a single wraith, no matter how powerful, bring down kingdoms that had endured for 1,000 years? The answers lie buried in fragments, in the appendices of Tolkien's great work, in letters and drafts and notes scrawled in the margins of unfinished tales. Scholars have pieced together glimpses, hints, shadows of the truth. And the truth is this. The Witch-king was not merely a servant of evil. He was a strategist, a king, a terror so profound that even the elves, who had fought Morgoth himself, trembled at his approach. Yet even his earliest deeds are shrouded in shadow, waiting to be uncovered. Before he was the Witch-king, he was a man. This is the first mystery. The first question that haunts every telling of his tale. Tolkien never named him, never revealed his mortal identity, his kingdom of origin, his deeds before the darkness claimed him. Perhaps the professor believed some secrets should remain hidden, or perhaps he simply never decided, left it open, a void in the narrative where imagination could dwell. But we have clues. The Witch-king was one of the 9, the mortal men who accepted rings of power from Sauron in the Second Age. These were not fools or weaklings. They were kings, sorcerers, warriors of great renown, men of ambition and skill, chosen precisely because they possessed the strength of will to wield such power. And yet that strength became their doom. The 9 rings were beautiful, deceptive. They promised immortality, dominion, knowledge beyond mortal reach. And for a time, they delivered. The 9 became mighty beyond all their peers. They built kingdoms, commanded armies, ruled with wisdom and terror in equal measure. But the rings were lies. Forged by Sauron in the fires of Mount Doom, bound to the one ring he wore in secret, they were chains disguised as crowns. Slowly, invisibly, they consumed their bearers. The years passed, and the nine did not age, but neither did they live. Their flesh faded. Their hearts grew cold. Their wills became extensions of Sauron's own. They became the Nazgul, the Ringwraiths, shadows in the shape of men. And the greatest of them, the first to fall, or perhaps the last to resist, became the Witch-king. Where did he come from? Some scholars suggest he was a Númenórean lord, one of the Black Númenóreans who served Sauron after the downfall. A man of noble lineage, corrupted by pride and the lure of eternal life. Others argue he was a king of the Easterlings or the Haradrim, a warrior from distant lands who accepted the ring as tribute from the Dark Lord. Tolkien himself hinted in one letter that the origins of the Nine were varied, that they came from different lands and peoples, united only by their shared doom. But the Witch-king stood apart. Even among the Nazgul, he was foremost, the Lord of the Nine, the captain of Sauron's most terrible servants. This was not by chance. He must have been exceptional even in life, a king of great cunning, a sorcerer of formidable skill, a leader who commanded not through brute force alone but through fear and strategy. And when Sauron fell at the end of the Second Age, when the last alliance of elves and men drove him from power and cut the one ring from his hand, the Nazgul vanished. Not destroyed. They could not be destroyed while the ring endured, but diminished. Without Sauron's will to guide them, they became like smoke without fire. They retreated into the shadows, to dark places where the light of the West did not reach. For 1,000 years, they were silent. But silence is not the same as absence. In the year 1300 of the Third Age, something stirred in the north. Beyond the bounds of the old kingdom of Arnor, in the cold mountains where no one dwelt, a shadow began to gather. Orcs crept down from the misty mountains. Wolves prowled the edges of settled lands. Strange reports reached the Dunedain of Arthedain, of lights in the hills, of dark riders on the roads, of villages found empty with no sign of struggle. And in the heart of that gathering darkness, a fortress rose, Carn Dûm, the mountain of red flame. And there, in a land that had no name, the Witch-king claimed a throne. He called his realm Angmar, the Iron Home. And from that frozen capital, he began a war that would last 7 centuries and break the North beyond repair. But why? Why would the greatest of the Nazgul choose the barren, forgotten North as his seat of power? Why not return to the south, to Mordor, to rebuild Sauron's empire where it had once stood? The answer is strategy. The North was weak, divided. Arnor, once the greatest kingdom of men in Middle-earth, had fractured into 3 petty realms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudor. They bickered among themselves, rivals for a crown none of them could claim alone. They had no great armies, no fortresses to rival Gondor's might. They were ripe for conquest. And more than that, they were forgotten. The eyes of the West looked south to Gondor, to the threat of Mordor. The North was a backwater, a relic of the past, perfect for a shadow to grow, unseen, unchecked, until it was too late. For even as he rose to power, a darker path had already claimed him. Imagine standing on the border of Arthedain in the year 1300 of the Third Age. Before you stretches a land of rolling hills and deep forests, dotted with villages and watchtowers. The Dunedain still dwell here, descendants of the men of Númenor who sailed west in the elder days. They are few, diminished from the glory of their ancestors, but proud still. They remember the old alliances, the oaths sworn with elves and dwarves. They remember Elendil and Isildur. Behind you to the north lies nothing, empty lands, cold mountains, a wilderness where no one goes, or so you believe. But in the shadows of those mountains, something is building. Carn Dûm rises like a black tooth from the hills. Its walls are iron and stone, wrought with dark sorcery that makes them impervious to siege and storm. Its gates are guarded by creatures that were once men, now twisted, broken things that serve without question. And from its highest tower, a presence watches, waits, plans. The Witch-king does not rush. This is the first lesson of his strategy, patience. He does not send armies crashing against the borders of Arthedain, does not declare open war. Not yet. Instead, he sends whispers, rumors, fear. Villages on the frontier begin to disappear, not burned, not sacked, simply emptied. The people are gone. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just silence. Travelers on the roads report strange encounters. Riders in black who do not speak, who leave no tracks, who vanish when pursued. Some who see them fall ill. Others go mad, raving about eyes like coals and voices that burrow into the mind. The Dunedain send scouts. Few return. Those who do speak of orcs in the hills more than they have ever seen, and of something worse. Something that commands them. A presence in Carn Dûm that fills the air with dread. But the reports are fragmentary, confused. No one knows what they are facing. And that is exactly how the Witch-king wants it. Fear is his weapon. Not the sharp, sudden fear of battle, but the slow, creeping fear of uncertainty. The terror of not knowing what lurks beyond the next hill, whether your neighbor has been touched by the shadow, whether the next night will bring something worse than the last. It is psychological warfare, refined to an art. By the time the lords of Arthedain realize they are under attack, the Witch-king has already laid the foundations of his power. Rudor, the weakest of the three successor states of Arnor, falls first, not to conquest but to corruption. Its lords are bribed, threatened, seduced by promises of power. Within a generation, Rudor is a puppet state, its king a servant of Angmar in all but name. Cardalan to the south fares little better. Its borders are harried by orcs and hillmen allied with the Witch-king. Its people are driven from their lands, forced to huddle in fortified towns while the wilderness beyond grows dark and dangerous. Only Arthedain resists, but Arthedain is alone. The elves of Rivendell, led by Elrond Half-Elven, watch with growing alarm. They send aid when they can, provisions, scouts, counsel. But the elves are few in this age, their strength waning. They cannot field armies as they once did. They can only delay, not defeat. The Witch-king knows this. He knows that time is on his side. The Dunedain grow fewer with each passing generation. Their bloodlines thin, their fortresses crumble. He does not need to crush them in a single blow. He need only outlast them, and he will, because he does not age, does not tire, does not die. The war drags on, years become decades. Decades become centuries. In 1409 TA, the Witch-king launches his first great offensive. His armies, orcs, trolls, hillmen, and darker things, sweep down from the north like a winter storm. They shatter the defenses of Rudor, which has long since fallen under his sway. They cross into Cardalan, burning and slaughtering. They besiege Weathertop, the great watchtower of Amon Sul, where the last of the Palantiri of the north is kept. The defenders hold, for a time, but the Witch-king himself comes to the battle. The texts do not describe his appearance in detail. Perhaps there is nothing to describe. He is shadow and terror, a shape that exists more in the mind than in the eye. His presence alone is enough to break the will of mortal men. Those who stand before him feel their courage drain away, replaced by a cold, suffocating despair. The tower falls. The Palantir is lost, shattered, or taken, the records do not say. The defenders are slain. Weathertop becomes a ruin haunted by the memory of that day. But the Witch-king does not stop. He presses south toward the last stronghold of Cardolan. The realm is broken, its king slain, its people scattered. Some flee to Arthedain. Others take refuge in the Barrow Downs, ancient burial mounds where they believe the spirits of their ancestors will protect them. They are wrong. The Witch-king sends his servants, dark spirits, wraiths lesser than the Nazgul but terrible still, into the barrows. They possess the dead, turn the tombs into prisons of fear and madness. For centuries afterward, the Barrow Downs are shunned, haunted by barrow wights that lure travelers to their doom. It is a deliberate cruelty, a message. There is no sanctuary, no refuge, not even in death. Arthedain barely survives. Reinforcements from Lindon, the last elven realm in the west, and from Rivendell turn the tide. The Witch-king's armies are driven back, though not destroyed. Carn Dûm remains. Angmar endures, and the Witch-king learns. He learns that he cannot rely on brute force alone. The Free Peoples, when united, are still formidable. He needs to divide them, isolate them, prevent alliances from forming. So he shifts tactics. He sends emissaries to the hillmen, offering them land and plunder in exchange for service. He sows dissent among the Dunedain, planting rumors and lies. He uses spies, men corrupted by fear or greed, to sabotage defenses and spread panic. And he waits. Winter is his ally, famine, disease, despair. The north grows colder. The harvests fail. The population dwindles. And in the growing darkness, the shadow of Angmar spreads. The Dunedain of Arthedain cling to hope. They believe that Gondor, their sister kingdom in the south, will send aid, that the elves will intervene, that the tide will turn. But Gondor is far away, embroiled in its own wars. The elves are fading, their time in Middle-earth drawing to a close. Arthedain is alone, and the Witch-king is patient. Yet despite all his power, even darkness has its limits. The final blow falls in the year 1974 of the Third Age. By this time, Arthedain is the last remnant of the North Kingdom. Cardolan is gone, its lands overrun by the Barrow Wights and haunted by the memory of its slaughter. Rudor has long since become a vassal of Angmar. Only Arthedain endures, barely. Its king, Arvedui, rules from Fornost Irain, the North Fort, the last great city of the Dunedain in the north. The population is a fraction of what it once was. The borders have shrunk. The watchtowers are abandoned. The people live in fear, knowing that the end is near. And the Witch-king knows it too. He marshals his full strength. Every orc host from the Misty Mountains. Every corrupted man from the Hillmen tribes. Trolls dragged from their caves. Wargs bred for war. And at the head of this horde, riding a great black steed, cloaked in shadow and dread, the Witch-king himself. The attack is overwhelming. The outer defenses of Arthedain collapse within days. Villages are abandoned without a fight. The people flee south, toward Fornost, toward the illusory safety of walls and numbers. But the walls cannot hold. Not against this. Fornost is besieged. The Witch-king does not assault the gates immediately. He surrounds the city and waits, lets the fear build, lets the supplies dwindle, lets the people inside understand, slowly and agonizingly, that there is no escape. Arvedui sends desperate pleas for aid, to Gondor, to Rivendell, to the Grey Havens. Gondor responds, but too late. The southern kingdom, preoccupied with its own threats, cannot muster an army quickly enough. By the time ships arrive bearing reinforcements, the north has already fallen. Rivendell sends what it can. Elrond himself rides to the aid of Arthedain, bringing warriors clad in silver and starlight. But they are few, and the darkness is vast. In the depths of winter, the coldest winter in living memory, the Witch-king gives the order. The assault begins. The gates of Fornost are shattered not by rams, but by sorcery. The very air seems to crack and splinter under the weight of the Witch-king's malice. Towers collapse, walls crumble, and through the breaches pour the armies of Angmar, screaming and howling, driven by fear of their master as much as hatred of their enemies. The Dunedain fight. They fight with the courage of those who have nothing left to lose. Every street is contested. Every house becomes a fortress. They make the Witch-king pay for every inch of ground in blood and fire. But it is not enough. Arvedui, seeing the battle lost, flees, not out of cowardice. He is the last king of his line, the bearer of the heirlooms of Arnor, and if he falls, the kingdom dies with him. He escapes through hidden tunnels, taking with him the crown, the ring of Barahir, the scepter of Anuminas. He flees north into the frozen wastes, hoping to reach the Grey Havens by ship. He never makes it. Caught in the ice, stranded on the shores of a frozen bay, Arvedui accepts passage on an elvish vessel sent to rescue him. But the ship, battered by storms and the malice of the Witch-king's distant will, is caught in the ice and sinks. Arvedui drowns, along with the Palantiri he carried, the last seeing stones of the north. Fornost falls, the city is sacked. The survivors, those not slain outright, are driven into the wilderness. The Witch-king's forces burn the libraries, smash the monuments, desecrate the tombs. Fornost, once the jewel of the north, becomes a haunted ruin. Arnor is no more. The North Kingdom, which had endured since the days of Elendil, which had stood as a bastion of the free peoples for over 3,000 years, is broken beyond repair. Its people are scattered. Its cities are ruins. Its kings are dead. The Witch-king stands victorious, or so it seems. But even in his triumph, the shadow overreaches. For Gondor, though late, has sent aid. A great fleet arrives from the south, bearing an army led by Eonar, the crown prince of Gondor, and Círdan the shipwright, lord of the Grey Havens. They land in the north and march on Fornost, determined to drive out the invaders. And from Rivendell comes Glorfindel, the elf lord who once slew a Balrog in the First Age, now returned to Middle-earth to fight the darkness once more. The Witch-king, flush with victory, does not retreat. He meets them on the plains north of Fornost at a place that will be remembered as the Battle of Fornost. It is a slaughter, but not the one he expects. The armies of Angmar, overextended and exhausted from the siege, are no match for the combined forces of Gondor and the elves. The orcs break and flee. The hillmen scatter. The trolls are hewn down, and the Witch-king himself is driven from the field. Glorfindel pursues him, blazing with the light of Valinor. The Witch-king flees not in fear. He cannot fear, not truly, but in recognition. He knows he cannot stand against this foe. Not now, not here. As the Witch-king vanishes into the northern wastes, Glorfindel speaks a prophecy. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall. The battle is won. Angmar is broken. Carn Dûm is stormed and razed. The forces of darkness are scattered, but the Witch-king is not destroyed. He escapes, vanishes, returns eventually to Mordor, where Sauron, who has slowly been rebuilding his strength, welcomes him back into the fold. The north is free, but it is also empty. Arnor is gone. Its people are scattered. Its cities are ruins. The Dunedain who survive dwindle into the rangers, wanderers, guardians of lands that no longer bear their names. The shadow has passed, but it has left scars that will never heal. But even as Arnor fell, whispers of rebellion and hope persisted. Why did the North fall when the South endured? This is the question that haunts historians of the Third Age. Gondor, facing equal, if not greater, threats from Mordor and the Easterlings, survived. It bent but did not break. Its cities stood. Its kings ruled. Its armies marched. But Arnor, once the Elder Kingdom, once the seat of Elendil himself, collapsed. Why? The answer lies not in strength of arms, but in unity. Or rather, the lack of it. Gondor was a single kingdom, ruled by a single king with a unified military and bureaucracy. When threats arose, it could respond with coordinated force. Its lords did not bicker over succession. Its people did not fragment into rival states. Arnor had no such advantage. When the North Kingdom divided in the year 861 TA, split between the three sons of Aerendur into Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudor, it lost the strength that had sustained it. The three realms were rivals, not allies. They quarreled over borders, over the crown, over scraps of faded glory. And the Witch-king exploited that division with ruthless precision. Rudor was the first to fall, not to conquest, but to infiltration. The Witch-king did not need to destroy it. He simply needed to corrupt it. He sent agents, men, perhaps, or spirits cloaked in mortal guise, to whisper in the ears of Rudor's lords. He offered power, wealth, protection. He turned the kingdom against its neighbors. By the time Arthedain and Cardolan realized what was happening, Rudor was already lost. Its armies marched alongside Angmar's. Its fortresses were open to the enemy. Its people were conscripted into the Witch-king's service, willing or not. Cardolan and Arthedain, weakened and divided, could not respond effectively. They sent armies to fight Rudor, not the true enemy. They wasted resources on petty border wars while the shadow grew stronger, and the Witch-king watched and waited and smiled if a wraith can smile. Even when the free peoples tried to unite, the Witch-king found ways to divide them. The elves of Rivendell and Lindon offered aid, but their help was conditional. They would fight to defend the Dunedain, but they would not commit to total war. They were too few, too weary. The glory days of the First Age were long past. The elves were fading, preparing for the journey west. The dwarves of the Blue Mountains and Erd Luin offered trade and occasional military support, but they had their own concerns. Dragonfire in the north, internal strife. The dwarves were not inclined to throw themselves into a war that did not directly threaten their holds. Men of other lands, the Northmen, the Eotheod, even distant Gondor, were too far away, too preoccupied, or too ignorant of the threat. The North was isolated. And isolation is the ally of tyranny. The Witch-king understood this. He understood that the free peoples, when united, were formidable. But unity requires trust, communication, shared purpose, and all of those can be undermined. He sent spies into Arthedain, disguised as refugees or traders. They spread rumors, false reports of elven treachery, dwarven greed, Gondorian indifference. They sowed paranoia, made the Dunedain doubt their allies. He timed his attacks to disrupt alliances. When Arthedain sent emissaries to Gondor, seeking aid, the Witch-king struck at the roads, ensuring the messengers were delayed or killed. When the elves of Rivendell marched north, he sent diversionary forces to threaten other fronts, forcing them to split their strength. And he used fear. Not just the fear of battle, but the fear of betrayal. The fear that your neighbor might be a servant of the enemy. The fear that your king might be mad, that your allies might abandon you, that everything you trust might be a lie. This is the genius of the Witch-king's strategy. He did not merely wage war. He waged terror. He did not merely conquer, he corrupted. He turned the free people's greatest strength, their diversity, their alliances, into a weakness. And in the end, the North fell not because it lacked courage or skill, but because it lacked unity. The kingdoms fought alone, died alone. And the Witch-king, who had been a king of men before the darkness claimed him, knew exactly how to exploit that. But there is a deeper irony here. The Witch-king himself was once mortal. Once he had ruled a kingdom, perhaps much like Arthedain or Rudor. Once he had faced threats, made alliances, struggled to protect his people. And then he accepted the ring. In seeking to preserve his power, he destroyed it. In seeking immortality, he lost his humanity. He became a tool of Sauron, eternal, yes, but empty. A shadow without substance. A king without a kingdom unless one counts the slaves and monsters that served him. Did he regret it? Did he remember in some buried fragment of his wraith mind what it was like to be mortal? To feel the sun's warmth? To know hope? The texts do not say. Perhaps he was too far gone. Perhaps regret is a luxury the damned cannot afford. But the question lingers. And in the shadows, even allies became instruments of his power. To understand the Witch-king, we must understand the nature of the curse that made him. The 9 rings of power, forged in the Second Age by Celebrimbor and Sauron. Though Celebrimbor did not know Sauron's true identity, the rings were masterworks of craft and sorcery. They were meant to preserve, to enhance, to grant their bearers dominion over the forces of decay and time. And they did, for a time. The 9 rings were given to men, great kings and sorcerers, lords of ambition and will. They were not chosen at random. Sauron selected each recipient carefully, offering the rings as gifts, as tokens of alliance, as rewards for service. Some accepted eagerly, others cautiously, but all accepted, because the rings were beautiful. And power in the hands of the ambitious is irresistible. At first, the bearers of the 9 prospered. They became mighty beyond measure. Their kingdoms flourished. Their enemies fell before them. They lived for centuries without aging, their strength undiminished, their minds sharp. But the rings were lies. Bound to the one ring, which Sauron forged in secret in the fires of Mount Doom, the 9 were tools of control. And as the years passed, they tightened their grip. The process was slow, invisible. The bearers did not notice at first as their flesh began to fade, as their thoughts grew colder, as their dreams turned to darkness. They told themselves it was the price of power, the cost of greatness. And by the time they realized the truth, it was too late. The 9 rings did not kill their bearers. Death would have been a mercy. Instead, they transformed them. Their bodies became insubstantial, existing more in the realm of shadow than in the physical world. They could no longer taste food, feel warmth, experience joy or sorrow. They were hollow wraiths, spirits bound to the will of the One Ring and through it to Sauron himself. They became the Nazgul, the Ringwraiths, and the greatest of them became the Witch-king. What does it mean to be a wraith? Imagine existence as a series of sensations: sight, sound, touch, taste, the warmth of the sun, the chill of rain, the weight of your own body. Now imagine those sensations fading, one by one, until all that remains is a vague awareness of the world, seen as if through a veil. You are there, but not there. You can see the living, but you cannot join them. You can remember warmth, but you cannot feel it. You can observe joy, but it is alien to you, a thing that belongs to others. You are a ghost in your own existence. And yet, paradoxically, you are more powerful than you ever were in life. The Nazgul do not tire. They do not age. They cannot be killed by conventional means. Swords pass through them, arrows lodge in shadow and fall away. They can ride the winds, move unseen, inspire terror with their mere presence. But they are not free. Every thought, every action is ultimately an extension of Sauron's will. They have autonomy, cunning, strategy, personality, but it is a leashed autonomy. They serve because they must. The One Ring commands them, and while the ring exists, they cannot escape. The Witch-king, as the chief of the Nine, retained more of his original self than the others. He was still a king, still a strategist, still capable of planning, of ambition, of waging war on his own initiative. But he was also a slave. This is the tragedy of the Nazgul. They sought immortality and received it, but at the cost of everything that makes life worth living. They are eternal but empty, powerful but hollow. Kings without kingdoms, warriors without cause, men without humanity. And the Witch-king is the most tragic of all, because he was the greatest. The texts hint that he was the first to fall, or perhaps the last to resist, and thus the most completely broken. He became Sauron's chief lieutenant, the Lord of the Nine, entrusted with the most critical tasks. He was sent to the north to break Arnor. Later, he would be sent to Minas Morgul to command Sauron's forces against Gondor. But for all his power, he was still bound. There are moments in Tolkien's writings where the Witch-king's autonomy shines through. His strategy in the north, patient, cunning, psychological, suggests a mind still capable of independent thought. His rage at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields when Eowyn and Merry defy him suggests emotion, pride, fury. But these are flickers, shadows of what he once was. The rest is void. The curse of the Nine is not merely physical transformation. It is spiritual annihilation. The slow, inexorable erasure of the self until all that remains is function, purpose, service. And yet the Witch-king endured. For over 4,000 years, from the forging of the rings to his final fall, he existed, served, fought, ruled. Did he ever long for death? Did he ever, in the depths of his cursed existence, wish that the burden would end? That someone would find the One Ring and destroy it, freeing him from the eternal torment of unlife? Or had he forgotten what it meant to wish for anything at all? The texts do not answer, but they offer one tantalizing detail. The Witch-king feared certain things. Fire, wielded by those with the knowledge and will to command it. The blades of the Dunedain, forged in ancient days with spells of protection. And most of all, elves. The elves, who dwelt in both the physical world and the realm of shadow, could perceive the Nazgul as they truly were, could strike at them with weapons of starlight and song, could resist their terror and drive them back. This is why Glorfindel's pursuit of the Witch-king at Fornost was so significant. The elf lord, who had died and been re-embodied, who had walked in Valinor and returned, was more than a match for a wraith, even the Lord of the Nine. And the Witch-king knew it. He fled not out of cowardice, but out of recognition. He understood, as only a being of immense age and experience could, that there are fates worse than defeat. And to be destroyed by an elf of such power would mean imprisonment in the void, perhaps forever, until the One Ring was found and his spirit recalled. Better to retreat, to endure, to wait for another opportunity. This is the calculus of immortality. When you have eternity, you can afford to lose battles, to retreat, to wait, because time, in the end, is on your side. A shadow without flesh, yet still driven by mortal ambition. The year is 1975 of the Third Age. Fornost has fallen. Arnor is broken. The north lies in ruins, its people scattered, its cities empty. The Witch-king stands at the height of his power. His armies occupy the lands from the mountains of Angmar to the borders of the Shire. His servants prowl the roads, hunting the remnants of the Dunedain. His will presses down upon the north like a weight of iron and shadow, but the free peoples have not given up. From Gondor, a great fleet sails north, bearing an army led by Arnor, son of the king. Arnor is young, fierce, eager for glory. He has heard the tales of the Witch-king and burns to test himself against this legendary foe. From the Grey Havens, Círdan the shipwright musters the last strength of his people. The elves of Lindon, though few, are still mighty. They march to war clad in silver mail, bearing blades forged in ages past. And from Rivendell comes Glorfindel the golden-haired, elf lord of legend, who once fought a Balrog upon the peaks of the encircling mountains and fell into the abyss, only to be sent back to Middle-earth by the Valar themselves. He is ancient beyond reckoning. A warrior who walked in Gondolin before the sun and moon were made. A being of light and wrath returned to the mortal world to fight the darkness. The forces of the free peoples converge upon Fornost. The Witch-king does not flee. Not yet. He has just broken the greatest kingdom of the north. His armies are victorious. His power has never been greater. And now the fools of Gondor and the fading elves come to challenge him. Let them come. The Witch-king marshals his forces on the plains north of Fornost, where the land is open and the wind howls cold. His armies are vast, orcs from the mountains, trolls dragged from their caves, hillmen loyal to Angmar, and darker things, spirits and wights bound to his will. And he himself rides at their head, a shape of shadow and dread astride a great black horse, wielding a sword that seems to drink the light. The battle begins at dawn. The forces of Gondor and the elves advance in disciplined ranks, their banners snapping in the wind. Arnor leads the charge, his cavalry crashing into the orcish lines with devastating force. The hillmen break and flee. The trolls, massive and brutal, are hewn down by elvish blades, but the Witch-king does not move. He watches from a hill, his presence a cold weight upon the battlefield. And where his gaze falls, courage falters, men stumble, their weapons slipping from nerveless fingers. Horses scream and bolt, throwing their riders. Arnor, undaunted, drives toward him. The young prince is brave, perhaps too brave. He sees the Witch-king and charges, heedless of the terror that radiates from the wraith. His knights follow, their lances lowered, their voices raised in a battle cry. The Witch-king meets them. His sword sweeps out, and the first rank of knights falls, not cut down, but broken. Their armor crumples. Their horses collapse. They do not bleed. They simply cease, as if the life has been drained from them. Arnor's charge falters. For the first time, the young prince feels true fear. Not the fear of death, but the fear of something worse, of emptiness, of void, of the knowledge that he is nothing before this ancient malice. But before the Witch-king can strike him down, Glorfindel arrives. The elf lord blazes onto the battlefield like a star descending. His armor shines with a light that does not come from the sun. His sword, Gondolindrim, gleams with the fire of Valinor, and when he raises it, the shadows recoil. The Witch-king turns to face him. For a moment, the two stand opposed, elf and wraith, light and shadow, ancient powers from ages long past. And then Glorfindel charges. The Witch-king does not stand to meet him. He flees. Not in panic, he cannot panic, but in cold calculation. He knows he cannot win this fight. Glorfindel is too mighty, too suffused with the light of the blessed realm. To stand against him here in this place would mean destruction. So the Witch-king turns his steed and rides north, into the wilderness, into the cold wastes where no one dwells. Glorfindel pursues. The elf lord rides like the wind, his steed's hooves barely touching the ground. He chases the Witch-king across frozen rivers and through dark forests, through lands where the shadow has crept and twisted the very stone. But he does not catch him. The Witch-king vanishes into the north, into the ruins of Carn-dûm, into the empty places where even elves dare not long remain. And as Glorfindel stands at the edge of the waste, watching the last trace of the wraith disappear, he speaks the words that will echo through the ages. Do not pursue him. He will not return to this land. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall. A prophecy and a warning, the battle of Fornost is over. The forces of Angmar are scattered, broken, driven into the mountains. Carn-dûm is stormed and destroyed. The north is free, but the Witch-king is not slain. He endures. He retreats, yes, back to Mordor, where Sauron is slowly rebuilding his strength. But he is not defeated, merely delayed. And in the long centuries that follow, he will rise again, as the Lord of Minas Morgul, as the captain of Sauron's armies in the War of the Ring. The shadow has not been destroyed, only driven back. For now, even in defeat, the shadow could not be destroyed. After the fall of Angmar, the Witch-king vanishes from history. For over 1,000 years, the texts are silent on his movements. He does not appear in the chronicles of Gondor. The elves speak of him only in whispers, if at all. The Dunedain, scattered into the Rangers, keep watch for his return, but the centuries pass and he does not come. Where did he go? The answer, pieced together from fragments in the appendices and notes, is both simple and chilling. He went to Mordor, and he waited. Sauron, though driven from power at the end of the Second Age, was not destroyed. His spirit endured, bound to the One Ring, and slowly, patiently, he began to rebuild. First as a shadow, a formless malice haunting the ruins of Dol Guldur in Mirkwood. Later, as his strength returned, he reclaimed Mordor itself, raising the Dark Tower anew and gathering his servants. The Witch-king was foremost among them, but this time he did not lead armies, not immediately. Instead, he worked in secret, behind the scenes, shaping events with subtle cruelty. He sent emissaries to the kingdoms of men in the east and south, the Easterlings, the Haradrim, whispering promises of power and wealth if they would serve the Dark Lord. Some listened. Some fell under Sauron's sway, their kings taking rings or gifts that bound them to Mordor's will. He orchestrated assassinations, political coups, famines, plagues, not directly. He was too careful for that. But through agents, through corrupted men, through the long, patient work of undermining the free peoples from within, he learned from his defeat in the north. Angmar had fallen because he had been too visible, too aggressive. He had drawn the attention of Gondor and the elves, had provoked a united response. This time, he would be more careful. He would work in shadows, unseen, until the moment of Sauron's final stroke. And so, for 1,000 years, the Witch-king became a whisper, a rumor. The occasional report of a dark rider on the roads of Mordor, a cloaked figure in the courts of distant kings, a voice in the night offering power to those desperate or ambitious enough to listen. But nothing that could be proven, nothing that could be opposed. Until in the year 2000 of the Third Age, the Nazgul emerged once more. They rode out from Mordor, all 9, reunited under the command of their lord. They besieged Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Moon, the easternmost fortress of Gondor. For 2 years, the siege lasted. The defenders held valiantly, desperately. But the Witch-king was patient. He had learned the value of attrition. He did not need to storm the walls. He needed only to wait until starvation, disease, and despair broke the defenders' will. In 2002 TA, Minas Ithil fell. The Witch-king claimed it as his seat of power. He renamed it Minas Morgul, the Tower of Dark Sorcery, and from there he commanded Sauron's forces in the long war against Gondor. But even here he did not rush. He sent raiding parties, harassed the borders, spread fear, but he did not launch a full assault on Minas Tirith, Gondor's capital. Not yet, because he understood something that many of Sauron's servants did not. Time was on their side. Gondor, like Arnor before it, was weakening. Its kings grew fewer, its bloodline thinned, its people dwindled. The great cities of the south stood strong, yes, but they were shadows of what they had been. Every year the free peoples grew weaker. Every year the darkness grew stronger. All the Witch-king had to do was wait. And so he did, for another 1,000 years. He ruled from Minas Morgul, sending out his terror into the night. He commanded the Nazgul in their hunts and raids. He watched with cold satisfaction as Gondor slowly crumbled from within, its kings dying without heirs, its stewards struggling to hold the realm together. He saw the line of kings end, saw the crown placed in the vaults unclaimed, saw the throne empty, and he knew that the time was coming. When Sauron finally revealed himself, when the Dark Lord declared open war upon the West, the Witch-king would be ready. He had learned patience in Angmar. He had learned subtlety in the East. He had learned cruelty in Minas Morgul. And when the War of the Ring came, he would be Sauron's greatest weapon. But for now, he waited. In the darkness of Morgul Vale, beneath the pale, corpse light of the Moon Tower, the Witch-king sat upon his throne and dreamed, if wraiths can dream, of the final fall of the West, of Gondor broken, of Rivendell in ruins, of the Shire in flames, of a world drowned in shadow where the free peoples were no more and the servants of Sauron ruled eternal. He had waited 1,000 years. He could wait a little longer. Even when history forgot him, his shadow endured. What does it mean to be remembered? For mortals, memory is everything. It is the only immortality most can hope for, to live on in the stories others tell, in the names carved on stones, in the deeds that echo through generations. But for the Witch-king, memory is a weapon. He does not need to be loved. He does not need to be honored. He needs only to be feared, and he is. In the north, centuries after the fall of Angmar, his name is still a curse. Mothers quiet their children with warnings of the Witch-king. Travelers avoid the ruins of Carn Dûm and Fornost, where his shadow is said to linger. The Barrow Downs, haunted by the wights he sent, remain shunned and feared. The north never recovered. The cities were never rebuilt. The kingdoms were never refounded. The Dunedain became wanderers, rangers without a realm, guarding lands that bore no loyalty to them. This is the Witch-king's legacy. Not conquest, he did not hold the north. Not empire, Angmar crumbled after his defeat. But ruin. The deliberate, calculated destruction of a people and a land, so complete that even victory could not undo it. In Gondor, his legacy is different but no less profound. The fall of Minas Ithil and its transformation into Minas Morgul cast a shadow over the south that never lifted. The city became a symbol of corruption, of the inevitable decay that the Witch-king represented. For 1,000 years, it stood as a reminder that even the mightiest fortresses could fall, that even Gondor was not invincible. And the Witch-king's presence in Morgul Vale paralyzed Gondor's strategy. They could not ignore him. His forces raided constantly, threatened the borders, kept the armies of Gondor perpetually on edge. But they could not defeat him either. Every attempt to retake Minas Morgul failed. So Gondor endured, bled, weakened, exactly as the Witch-king intended. But his legacy is not merely strategic or military. It is psychological. The Witch King perfected the art of terror. He understood that fear, properly wielded, is more powerful than any army. A people who live in constant dread, who expect disaster at every turn, cannot thrive, cannot build, cannot hope. And without hope, they are already defeated. This is why the Witch King was Sauron's greatest servant. Not because he commanded the largest armies, others did that. Not because he won the most battles, he lost as many as he won. But because he broke the spirit of his enemies in a way that no other servant of the Dark Lord could match. He was the embodiment of inevitability, of the slow, creeping certainty that the darkness would win, that resistance was futile, that the light would eventually be snuffed out. And for many, that belief became a self-fulfilling prophecy. There is a bitter irony in this. The Witch King was once a man, once mortal. Once, perhaps, someone who fought for his people, who sought to protect his kingdom from the very darkness he would later serve. And in becoming immortal, in seeking to escape death, he became the agent of death for countless others. His transformation was a warning, one that Tolkien embedded deeply in the fabric of his world. The desire for power, for immortality, for dominion over fate itself, leads not to transcendence but to ruin. The Witch King is eternal, yes, but he is also empty. A hollow shell, a tool of another's will, a shadow without substance. Is this the legacy he wanted? When he first accepted the ring, did he imagine this future? Did he foresee that he would become a thing of terror, feared and hated, serving a master he could never defy? Or did he believe, as so many do, that he would be different, that he could wield the power without being consumed by it? The texts do not say, but the result is clear. The Witch King's legacy is not greatness, it is tragedy. He destroyed kingdoms, yes. He commanded armies, inspired terror, reshaped the history of Middle-earth, but he did so as a slave, a wraith. A thing without joy, without love, without any of the qualities that make existence meaningful. He is remembered, but not as a king, not as a hero, not even as a conqueror. He is remembered as a shadow, a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when ambition eclipses humanity. And perhaps that is the cruelest fate of all, to be eternal, to be powerful, and to be utterly, irrevocably empty. And so the shadow passes but never truly fades. Stand with me now in the ruins of Fornost. The wind howls through broken towers. Snow drifts against crumbled walls. The streets, once filled with the voices of thousands, are silent save for the cries of ravens. This was a city of kings, a place of light and law where the Dunedain dwelt in the strength of their lineage and the memory of Númenor. It stood for over 2,000 years. And then the Witch King came. Now it is a grave, not a grave for the dead alone, but for an entire people, for a way of life, for a kingdom that will never return. The Witch King is gone. Defeated at last upon the Pelennor fields, his spirit scattered into the void when the One Ring was unmade in the fires of Mount Doom. He no longer haunts the roads or rules from dark towers, but his shadow lingers. It lingers in the ruins of Fornost and Carndoom, in the haunted Barrow Downs where the Whites still stir, in the empty lands of the north where the Dunedain wander as strangers in the realm of their ancestors. It lingers in Minas Morgul, which even after Sauron's fall remained tainted, its stones poisoned by the centuries of the Witch King's rule. In the Fourth Age, it was decreed that the city should be cast down, utterly destroyed, lest its evil endure. But can such evil truly be unmade? The stones can be scattered, the towers can be thrown down, but memory remains. And memory is a shadow that cannot be destroyed. The Witch King's story is a reminder of the costs of war. Not the immediate costs, the battles fought, the lives lost, but the long-term costs. The erosion of hope, the collapse of civilizations, the scars left on the land and the people that endure long after the enemy is defeated. Arnor never recovered. Even with Sauron gone, even with the Witch-king destroyed, the North remained broken. Its cities were not rebuilt. Its people did not return. The kingdom of Elendil, elder brother to Gondor, passed into legend and memory. This is the tragedy of Tolkien's world. Victory is possible. Evil can be defeated, but the victory is never clean. The wounds never fully heal. The world that emerges from the darkness is not the same as the one that entered it. And yet, there is hope. The Witch-king fell. Angmar was broken. The North endured even in diminishment. The Dunedain survived as rangers, as wanderers, as keepers of the flame. And in the end, one of their line, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir of Isildur, reclaimed the throne of Gondor and was crowned king of the reunited kingdom. The Shadow did not win, not in the end, but the cost of that victory was immense. And the memory of what was lost, Fornost, Arnor, the thousands who fell to the Witch-king's terror, remains. So when you walk through the ruins of the North, when you see the empty halls and the overgrown roads, remember this. These stones are not just rubble, they are monuments. Monuments to courage and tragedy, to the kingdoms that stood against the Shadow and paid the ultimate price. And when you hear the wind howling through the mountains, listen closely. For in that wind you may hear the echo of ancient battles, the cries of the Dunedain, the roar of the Witch-king's armies, the clash of steel and the thunder of hooves. The history is not dead. It is only sleeping, waiting perhaps for someone to remember, to tell the story, to ensure that the sacrifices of those who fought and fell are not forgotten. The Witch-king may be gone, but his shadow lingers eternally in the stones and hearts of the North. And as long as those stones stand, as long as the tales are told, the warning remains. That power sought for its own sake leads only to ruin. That immortality without humanity is a curse, not a blessing. And that even the mightiest shadow in the end falls before the light. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you.